I have got Bengals. I shouldn't have Bengals.
Welcome to episode 21 of the MicroMuse, and this time it is Vicky and Sophie Blackmore, and we're talking about Sophie's wonderful microbook called It's Only Bloody Marketing, and it looks like this. Yay! It's so much fun. Hi Sophie, thank you so much for joining me.
You're welcome.
Tell us about. Oh, I've also got this little dude who sits on my desk, and I pull him until he pings.
Yeah.
Very satisfying. That was from Sophie's book launch, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Sophie, tell us all about your book. Tell us about It's Only Bloody Marketing.
Okay, so It's Only Bloody Marketing started out as a bit of a kind of what can I do to get in front of the people that I really like to work with ultimately, because the people who benefit the most from what I'm doing are usually quite hard to get their attention because they're very busy, they work very hard, and it's quite difficult to be able to have a conversation with them about marketing because they're not really interested in marketing and they're too busy doing their day job, right? So it kind of came out of what can I do with that? And then it started to roll into actually the way that I approach things is quite unmarketing-y in that an awful lot of people take it incredibly seriously. And that's not to say that I don't take it seriously, because I do. But I am also a little bit of the viewpoint that I'm like, well, do you know what? It's not that big a deal. We're not saving lives here particularly. Let's not pretend it's something more than it is. And I realize that kind of approach of, while I'm very proud of the work that I do and I love to help people to see it for what it really is, there's a bit of a permission thing in the kind of like you might just want to just all calm down a little bit. Like, it's really not that big a deal. And actually, if you take away the fear of it, it becomes 10 times easier to do. And that was the whole point of It's Only Bloody Marketing. And I think, in fact, it was a conversation I had with you when I went, it's just only bloody marketing. And you were like, that's a good title for a book. And I was like, it is a good title for a book.
Yeah.
So that's how it was born.
Amazing. I love what you said about you take what you do very seriously. I always think about that in a similar way, because I always take my work with my clients very seriously, but I'm not always serious about it. And that's the difference. Yes. It's we don't always have to be serious. We don't even have to be serious all the time about really serious stuff. And it's that's why comedians do so well, right? This is a very funny book. I love everything about it. I really enjoyed working on it. I love the branding of it. It just looks so fun. And your little logo, the happy marketer, I love that as well. It's just and the picture on the back I've just looked at again. It's so funny. So yeah, it's a cracking little book. So what made you decide to do MicroBook Magic and work with me?
So many moons ago, a mentor that I had said, you should write a book. And I laughed and said, that's daft. Who's going to want to hear about what I have to say? So the idea had been planted many years ago. But I was a bit like, who needs another marketing book? There's literally thousands of them. But the more I started to think about it, and the more I realized that actually it didn't have to be like a War and Peace tome, the more an idea started to form. And then I'd come across yourself, and I'd signed up to a course that was to help you look at writing the microbook, but I wasn't very well. And at the time, the idea that I had didn't quite fit, so although I liked the idea of doing it and I wanted to do something creative, and the thought process was sort of there, I wasn't really able to give it the time that I wanted to. And also, whatever the thing was at that point just didn't really light me up. So I therefore didn't carry on doing it, because it wasn't kind of like in the back of my brain going, actually, I think I'm onto something, So I wanted to work with you, and the microbook course had opened my eyes in terms of, like, if I break this down, this is going to make things so much easier. And if I break this down with somebody who's done this before, a little bit like how I help clients, I was like, hang on a minute, I do this for the people with marketing. Maybe I could do this with somebody who knows a lot about writing books. So that was kind of like the starting point.
Nice. Well, it was an absolute delight working with you because you're so much fun. So
We had far too much fun, really, considering we were working, right?
I know. Well, this is the thing. I don't want it to feel like work. I mean, sometimes, and I'm sure you went through it, like sometimes at one point during the writing of a book, you're going to want to set, I say you're going to want to set fire to everything in the world, your book, your hair, everything. But like most of the time, it should be fun.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And there, there were times where I wanted to fling it out the window.
Yeah.
And I think surprisingly, what I found quite strange was it was more towards the end when it was very, very nearly done.
Mm.
And I'd put so much effort into it, but it's also like it was almost like I'd reached saturation point.
Yeah.
That like that last little bit of effort was almost, but it wasn't, but it was almost too much. In the fact that you're just like, do you know what, balls to it, can't do it, but I did, and I'm so pleased that I did, it was great. But yeah, but just having somebody alongside you to go, this happens, it's very common, take a deep breath, go for a walk, whatever, because otherwise you can start to question whether it's you that's having the problem and it's not just a general thing that everybody experiences.
Yeah, it does in my experience does tend to happen to everybody at some point.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
especially for those of us who are starters and not finishers, there is a point where you can get to the end and like you're just like, oh, you just can't anymore. And having that person with you to just like kick you along a little bit is
just seeing it through. And I think, I am a finisher, but I need something to make me do the finishing, which is partly why I set the date that I set, because I was like, right, if that's a line in the sand, I know that I will pontificate until probably about 3 weeks before, and then I'll be like a woman possessed, which is what happened, It's not necessarily the right way of doing something, but it is a way that enables me to get things done. So,
Yeah, and you know what? That's the way that worked for you. And like I have different people who have different ways of working. Like another client that I had around the same time, she was just very kind of had deadlines all the way through. Didn't do the leave it till the last minute thing, which is also a trick of mine. Like I need literally the world to be on fire, which kind of is, but my personal world to be on fire for it to actually happen. And but this other client I had was very like, nope, I am very calm. I know where I'm going at each stage. And I was just like, nice.
Yeah, there you go. Wow, that's really impressive. How do you do that?
I
think,
like
and what I've noticed is that the deadline thing for me is that actually I am doing the work, but a lot of it is in here.
Yes.
So by the time I get to the point of setting the deadline, it's sort of 80% done, but I do have to allow the time to get it out, know, and that's when it sort of sounds like I'm not doing anything up until that point, but actually I really was, because every time I spoke to you and every time I made notes and every time I was kind of, tinkering with something, it was all building up what that was going to become.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that, because that is a nugget that most people don't realize when they come to write their book. They're like, if they're not actually getting words on the page at every moment that they're kind of writing, then they're like, oh, I'm not doing it, I'm not getting anything done. I'm like, that's not true, because even when you're not consciously thinking about it, you're still kind of turning it over in your head.
Yeah. Well, some days I would have only written, I might have been like, I'm going to set aside half an hour to work on the book. And I would sit and just stare at my screen, and I'd maybe write one sentence. And, and while that's frustrating, after a little while, I was like, trust the process, because while I might not have written anything at that point, I might have then gone for a walk to pick up the kids from school, or I might have had a conversation with another client. And in the back of my head, those 8 to 10 words I did manage to get out were there. And then my brain would be making the connections, going either, oh, yes, it definitely is this, or, oh, no, it's not that. That's interesting. So the next time I came to do it, and I think that or certainly I sort of expected that I would sit and write in a very sort of disciplined fashion. But actually the discipline wasn't how much I wrote or when I wrote it. The discipline was remembering to think about it.
Yeah.
And as long as I created that space for me to think about it, the rest came out,
Yeah.
So you don't know what you're going to write either. Even if you know what you want to write about, you don't actually know what form that's going to take until you start to do it. So you have to allow that bit of wiggle room, but that's quite hard because you're sitting in this zone of uncertainty.
Yeah.
And you're also having to sort of look into yourself. Is that what I really want? And sometimes you don't always know the answer to that. So it's an interesting process.
Yeah, and that's two really uncomfortable things that humans don't like doing. They don't like uncertainty, and we do not like really looking at the insides of our heads because, like, God knows what you're going to find in there. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
for me, I'm writing a book about marketing, so the vulnerability there is like, well, actually, what if this is a load of rubbish? What if I don't know what I'm doing? This could be awkward, you know. You know, and you have to really figure out what you think. Yeah, and it's and at some point, I'm sure I'll look back and I'll think, oh, maybe I could have put that in a different way or whatever. But creating that is about sort of laying out your brain onto the page. And you know, our brains are messy. And you might feel about something one day really vehemently and another day not so much. You know, we're not linear beings, you know.
No.
That's
And
what makes it fun, right?
yeah, it is. And I'm going to just pick up on another thing that you said then as well. You know, one day you're probably going to look back on the book and be like, oh, I wouldn't say that like that again, or I don't perhaps believe that anymore. And I know that that can be a thing that puts people off. And it's like, don't let it put you off, because I would be worried if you were to look back on your book in a couple of years and nothing had changed. Like, that would worry me, because it's like, how have you then grown as a person and a marketer and a writer if you haven't changed? So I don't know if anyone's listening to this and they're like, oh, but you know, what if I get it wrong? What if I change my mind in a couple of years? You will, hopefully. That's not a bad thing. It's like a book is a snapshot in time, and then you can write the second edition or a different book, or, you know, whatever.
There's something about committing something to paper for me that felt very permanent.
Yes.
And the best way that I can liken it to is, I am old enough to be of the generation where I would take pictures on a night out when I was young, and we would go to Boots and we would pay the extra money to get developed in an hour, you know, like, and but do I worry about what those photos are if anybody was to come across them? No, because I was in my early 20s and that's that part of my life. But I think we attach a lot of importance to it being in book because book is formal, you know, but it's no different really. I think I've lost you. Have I lost you? Have you lost me? Hello?
Oh,
is she back? Was that you or was that me?
I think my internet just went down briefly. Apologies. But we're back.
I was a bit like, oh, she's gone.
Yeah, I don't know where we got to.
I was just saying about so I'll repeat it in case I disappeared at the same time. Essentially what I was saying was, when I was younger, I'm old enough that we used to take pictures on a night out and we'd go to Boots and get it developed in the 1 hour, you know, so we could see the pictures, right? Now, those pictures, fortunately, are not particularly widely available, but ultimately, if somebody was to come across that picture, that's still me. That's just a younger version of me.
Yeah.
And I think we worry about committing something to paper in book form because books are serious things.
Yeah.
Except they're not, you know, take Roald Dahl, like, you know, or you know, there's so many other different ways in which you can consume books that aren't super serious, but there's something that feels very formal about it because it's especially if it's a physical thing. But the way that I look at it is, well, yes, you know, in a few years' time, there's bound to be stuff that I look and kind of go, well, that wasn't quite right. It's like when you first do a logo for a business, if you start off on a big business and you think it's amazing, and then you look back and you go, you know, like, but that's all part of your evolution, right? So, you know, but part of doing it allows you to grow yourself as well. And that's a really interesting and fun part of it.
Yes, it is. And it's a thing that a lot of people don't realize is going to happen. It's like how much they grow and learn about themselves during the process. So,
yeah.
Okay, so let me just ask you real quick. What was your favorite part about doing MicroBook Magic?
What was my favorite part? Can I have two?
Yeah.
So I think one of my favorite parts was the bits that was nothing to do with the book, right?
Okay.
The play. Because if you will find out if you work with Vicky, or you will know if you have worked with Vicky, that every now and again you'll chuck in something that's really nothing to do with the book, right? But it's about playing with the words or thinking about something in a different way. And I think to a greater or lesser extent, we're all slightly programmed to be productive, you know, and just doing something just for the sheer joy of it as part of that lifted it. made it feel less heavy, you know, and that for me was really nice, because I'd be like, why am I writing a haiku? Like, what has this got to do with it? But then I'd do it and I'd quite enjoy it, and it would take me 10 minutes, like, but like that element of play was nice, because we forget to play a lot as humans, you know, so I enjoyed that. And then I think the second thing for me was really starting to feel like there were several themes that were things that I recognized actually quite how passionately I felt about them. You know, I'd maybe danced around them a little bit, but I'm generally sort of quite Switzerland in the fact that I don't argue with people on LinkedIn, and, you know, I'm not purposefully divisive in the way that I present myself. But there were things that I was like, actually, no, do you know what? That does upset me, or this isn't okay, or this is absolutely going to help them. And I could be even more definite, because I genuinely, having examined it, taken it out and given it a good poke, come back and gone, no, that is right. That is how I feel about it. And I was confident in saying it. And that was a really nice place to kind of be in, because you have to kind of, you know, take your opinions and examine them a bit when you're doing something like that. But to be able to come out with several where I was like, no, I would stand by that. You know, it was a nice place to be.
That's awesome. And it's an exercise that everybody on the internet should do, because it's really easy to fling out an opinion that somebody else has fed to you without ever really thinking about it. And that's the really wonderful thing about writing longer form work, is that you actually have to examine, oh, where's this come from? Is this something that I actually think? You know, what do I believe? And that is, like, leaving aside the value of books generally, is such a cool thing to be able to do, and something that literally everybody should, and I'm going to use the word should, do more of, because then we'll be far less screaming at each other online.
Yeah, and also it does allow you to just sort of test where you are with something. And, you know, we're always learning new things, so you can take it out, you can really examine it and say, okay, this is something that I stand by. It still might change, you know, but as long as you're looking at something critically. Obviously, don't examine it so much that you get to the point where you're like, well, I don't even know what I think anymore and I can't do anything. That's the wrong direction, you know. But just to stop and pause for a moment, and then feel like you've gone through that process, and therefore you're confident enough that you're like, do you know what, actually, that is who I am, that is how I feel, that is what people are going to expect from me. You know, that's a really nice place, because, like, as you say, we don't sit well with uncertainty. So to feel more certain about how you are and how you want to be presented is actually a really nice thing to be able to achieve out of the process, and not something that you necessarily would expect, I think, going in. So
love that. Thank you, Sophie. Can you tell us where we can buy your brilliant book?
Okay, so the best place to go is It's Only Bloody Marketing, because that has the links. It's currently for sale on Amazon. It will also be for sale very shortly on other platforms. So, you know, if you Google It's Only Bloody Marketing, it will come up. But at the moment, it is ebook and physical book on Amazon. There will be other places, and there will be, hopefully, an audio version coming soon. Coming soon, but that one's not quite there yet.
I've been saying coming soon for my audiobook for the last 3 years, and it's still
soon-ish.
Soonish. You are, however, more organized than I am, so that's probably.
Well, we shall see. I'm hoping that by saying this publicly, I will bring it into action.
Well, do you know what? I'm going to say it publicly as well, and then maybe mine will happen.
Okay, right, deal. I'll hold you accountable. You hold me accountable.
Okay, let's for real do that.
Okay,
cool. And where is the best place for people to stay in touch with you outside the book? Where should people follow you online?
Okay, so the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. If you just look for Sophie Blackmore. I do also have the Happy Marketer page, which is the page of my business, but it's mostly me talking about me. I basically use LinkedIn as an online blog, really, I think. So that's the best place to find me. But I do also have a newsletter, which you can sign up to either on my website, or it's also a link on It's Only Bloody Marketing. And if you do that, you'll also get my thoughts, musings, tips, etc., all in the same vein of what you would get in It's Only Bloody Marketing, once a week on a Monday. So if you want a little bit of extra Soph and you want to avoid the LinkedIn-ness maybe one day, that's another way of doing it.
Awesome, thank you. I can tell you that Sophie is a little ray of sunshine in the LinkedIn sea of LinkedIn AI bots and bros, so that's amazing. And also the newsletter is really, really delightful as well. I really enjoy reading it. I'm not your target audience, but I really enjoy reading it anyway. So
I will take that. That is a compliment indeed coming from yourself. So
thank you so much, Sophie. I am going to put the links below this, but just first, I'm going to share real quickly my 5-minute takeaway, which is set a timer for 5 minutes and write about the thing you have the biggest feelings about. No thinking, just writing. You can think later. Maybe that will form the kernel of an idea for your book. And then you can sign up for MicroBook Magic Season 7, which is at moxiebooks.co.uk/MicroBook Magic. We kick off on October the 20th. Drop me a DM or follow the link below. Sophie, thanks again so much for joining me.
You're welcome. I've enjoyed it. It's been lovely. And yeah, go and do the thing what she says, because it's awesome.
Thank you.